Family greetings, welcome back to my channel. I have a brief response to the Grammy situation. There's a lot of controversy that has emerged from this Grammys ceremony. The likes of Rohan Mali is now in the news cycle. We see that Rohan Mali was issuing out some SYMs in response to persons who criticized the Malis winning the Grammy. All right, so Rohan Mali decided to send people where the sun doesn't shine. But family, I believe all of this controversy is stemming from the fact that Caribbean music is vastly underrepresented in the Grammys. I had to look long and hard to find out the results on the Grammy website because there are about 64 categories. I believe more than 64 categories. And reggae happens to be in Field 7, which is Latin, global, reggae, and new age, ambient, or chant. Right? Now, initially, what I noticed is that this category is very nebulous and all over the place. All of the other fields happen to be like homogeneous, or they happen to be of one particular genre. If you look at Field 6, Field 6 is gospel and contemporary Christian music, right? And so there's a best contemporary Christian music performance. There's a best gospel album. There's a best contemporary Christian album. But what they do is they making a distinction between these different types of musical forms, right? And when you get into Field 7, if you notice the Latin pop album, there's a best Música Urbana album, there's a best Latin rock or alternative album, there's a best Música Mexicana album, there's a best tropical Latin album, and there was also a Latin jazz category. And so family, they went to great extent to represent all the different varieties of Latin music in the Grammys. But when it comes to African music, there's only two categories for African music. There's best African music performance and I think best African album, if I'm not mistaken. But when we get to category 65, which is where best reggae album falls into this particular section, and immediately you will see that this is not a best reggae album selection. This is an amalgamation of the entire Caribbean music scene in one category. I'm surprised I don't see Marshall Montana or some other soca, calypso. I'm surprised I don't see all of these in here because if you look at the list, right, let me turn the music down a little bit. The first person in the category is Vybz with his album called Take It Easy. Let me know that Vybz can go, he can make dancehall music as well as reggae music. He sings on some records and he DJs on some records, right? The second person on the list is Vybz Kartel with his album Party With Me. Not a good album. We had Shensia with her album Never Gets Late Here. And then we have the crowd favorite, the winner, Bob Marley, One Love, music inspired by the film. And then you also had the actual Wailers band. They've actually had like a legal separation and now they're an independent entity. And they had an album called Evolution with their new lead singer. And so family, I had many arguments with friends about this issue because people always try to say that dancehall and reggae are the same thing, right? I believe dancehall made a separation from reggae later on during its development because at one point, reggae and dancehall were sung on the same rhythms. They just had persons DJing on the same reggae rhythms that a person would sing a song on. But after a certain point, when they started to make these computerized beats, you would see there was a departure. There was a difference in the style. They had DJs adding sound effects and doing other things that made a distinction between roots reggae music that is mostly made with instruments, um, and then there's dancehall, which is basically lyrics that person's DJ over rhythms, right? And so there's a clear distinction. Reggae has the more soulful feel. Reggae is more um, roots oriented, whereas dancehall is the club music, party music. Persons basically rapping on the beats versus singing on the beats, right? But there are some dancehall songs that persons would sing. But I guess you have to just listen to the music and have some knowledge of the history to know the distinction between what is reggae and what is dancehall. And finally, my point is this: if they went to all of this extent to have these different forms of Latin music, why is it that they couldn't also make a dancehall category and make a reggae category? Because what's happening here, that's creating a lot of contention and controversy between these different artists. Because whereas Vybz Kartel and Shensia and Collie Buds could have been in a separate category, and this would have allowed for other artists to also get recognized who make predominantly dancehall music. Could have had persons like Popcorn, Massacre, and other artists, Alkaline. They could have also had their albums recognized, right? But they didn't do this. They put the reggae and the um, dancehall music in the same category. Now, as far as Rohan Mali and his response, I would like to say that it's very distasteful that Rohan Mali chose to make reference to persons' mothers just because they have a difference in opinion. You know, there was great anticipation that Vybz Kartel would win the Grammy. This is not something that is a surprise. There's a great number of persons that support Gaza, that support Vybz Kartel, and there was a lot of optimism and anticipation leading up to the Grammys. You know, and the fact that he had his release after 13 years and he got back to making money and he's become a trending topic again, it was a reasonable expectation that maybe he had a good chance to win, especially since he was nominated, you know. And so I don't think it's good for Bob Marley's legacy for his sons to grow up telling people to S their mother. You know, I don't think it was appropriate, but I understand that, you know, there's a desire to defend your family legacy. You don't want persons to be bad mouthing the family, you know, because of the perception that the Grammys are rigged in favor of the Marleys, you know. But when I look at the track list, there isn't a single song from Bob Marley on the track list. So persons are basically calling it a Marley win because it was the One Love film, and the Marleys basically were behind the soundtrack, they're behind the movie, you know. But if you look at the track list, I can list some of the persons that are on the album. There's somebody named Bloody Civilian, there is Skip Marley, there's Daniel Caesar, Casey Musgraves, Wizkid, Jesse Reyes, Leon Bridges, somebody called Faruko, Mystic Marley, which is another member of the Marley family, and Shensia. So there's 10 different artists on the track list for the One Love music inspired by the film album that won the Grammy, right? And so I think this was basically a victory for the Marley legacy versus any particular artist, because it wasn't a focus on one artist. Every artist had one song, so you can say that each of them equally contributed to this album. But I did read an article which stated that one of the singers, I don't know if it was Jesse, I think it's Casey Musgraves, who also sang a song on the Elvis movie soundtrack, which also I think won a Grammy. And so that could have also been a factor that tipped the scale in their favor, because this person also won a Grammy. So that would naturally bring a lot of, um, I guess, positives for them being the actual winner, because this person already won a Grammy. So it's like Grammy caliber work already. So family, there's a lot of factors I think that went into this, but I do believe more artists in the reggae fraternity need to have an opportunity to win the Grammy. Because I didn't really want to make the video. I have a lot of respect for Bob Marley and the family. But a few years ago, I made a video because I think Freddie McGregor had spoken out and said that he believes that the Grammy should be called the Marley Grammy. Because he thinks predominantly Marleys win the Grammy. You know, and I think this perception needs to be done away with, so that you don't discourage up and coming artists from continuing to polish their craft and release music. But family, let me know your thoughts in the comments below about all these dynamics. One love.